Well, Brett, thanks for inviting us to the official Inverell Aquatic Centre Open Day. Fantastic to be here.
Mike, my absolute pleasure, and it's fantastic to have you back with us again.
The purpose of the interview, I think, is just to get a GM and council perspective on how you develop such a major project. I think Inverell's highest capital cost project in its history, and the journey that we've been on. So we'll just work through a few questions on that. And again, I think first time I came to Inverell for my first visit was 2018, and 7 years later working for Odeon Planning Group, from virtually conceptual ideas, feasibility, financial modelling, detailed design, and then you and me in the trenches negotiating building tenders, etc. It's been a fantastic experience.
Certainly has, Mike. Very much a long, detailed, comprehensive process, and I think that went right back to 2007 when council really become aware our previous pool, like many of that era, whether they be Olympic pools, war memorial pools, started to show signs of end of life. So we started to think about the process. We engaged further experts, so we had numerous asset condition reports that really confirmed our suspicions that the previous pool had reached the end of its life, and we got on the front foot and then commenced the planning process. Like you said, that has been a long drawn out process, but I can't emphasise the benefit of having done that due diligence and how it stood us in good stead to then be able to deliver the facility you see today.
Maybe just first off, before we get too much into the project, tell us a bit about Inverell and Inverell Shire.
Inverell's situated on the northwest slopes of New South Wales. Our Shire is about 9,400 square kilometres, population of about 18,000 people. The northern boundary of our Shire touches the Queensland border, so we're in the northern part of the state. About 600 metres elevation, so we get 4 very true seasons throughout the year here, and it's a fantastic place to live. Burgeoning regional centre. We've got a couple of key employers, and certainly assets like this are important in delivering upon livability for our community and visitors to the region.
So the Inverell Aquatic Centre, which we're sitting in at the moment, official opening today. The original pool, I think, started around the mid-50s and opened up in 1958.
1958, and whilst it was before my time, I certainly do have a link to that. My grandfather was a Grafton-based builder, and he led the team that actually constructed that pool back in and finished it in 1958. It was a war memorial pool. Certainly served the needs of our community very well over that time. There were some modifications done in the 90s, which looked at a partial enclosure and a pop-up swim wall and heating. And that concept, as you know, was taken into the redevelopment of the new facility. So on the same site, which as part of our feasibility, as you would be aware, we had a good look at site location, and certainly council considered that this be the most appropriate site for our aquatic centre into the future.
The technological features of this site will be what will create notoriety, I'm sure, in the leisure and recreation industry. So maybe we just talk through the sort of features that have happened, and I suppose I'll do that. This video will probably go out to a lot of recreation professionals, and the first thing they would normally say is, unless you've got 50,000 people, you shouldn't have a 50-metre pool because it's going to cost you so much to run. If you build an outdoor pool in this climate, it's going to be sitting there going green for 6 months of the year. So I suppose that's the starting point to the technology and innovation that council's put in, and its designers and builders have put into the centre.
Yeah, without doubt. And look, we had, as you're well aware, you led us through, we had extensive discussions around, 50-metre pools tend to be a legacy of the past. A lot of councils now are going back to 25, 10 lanes, multi-use, etc. But I mentioned before that concept in the 90s with the pop-up swim wall, the partial enclosure, meant that we could turn an outdoor 50-metre pool into an indoor 25-metre heated pool. Now obviously the technology's come a long way since the mid-90s, but we looked to reutilise that technology in our redevelopment, and having a modern day movable boom with our massive 27 metre Wren leader door, so it's sealed, we can control 8 tonne, we can control that environment. But that gives us the best of both worlds. Come the warmer season, you hit the button, the door pops up, you move the boom, we're in 50 metre mode, and we even went to the extent with our planning that we were able to achieve that World Aquatics accreditation both in 25 metre and in 50 metre mode.
Which is going to be fantastic as the 232 Olympics hits Queensland. Yeah. I'm sure that Inverell will be attracting international teams to come as a training venue.
Yep.
And that World Aquatics accreditation gives you that high performance tick. And I've noted already when I go into World Aquatics that this site is on the coach's website, so they know that this centre meets those criteria.
We're reaping the dividends already. We've got February next year, 2026 Country Championships are going to be hosted here. We've certainly attracted interest within the industry, and we certainly wish to capitalise on that moving towards 2032, given we're the only venue with that accreditation in the northern part of the state.
Everyone watching this is going to say, how much? And also, we're in an industry at the moment that every time someone does a feasibility study, add another 30 or 40% to the final construction costs. So maybe lead us through how council, one made the decision to spend the budget that you have, but also the safety steps that I suppose allowed you to be in control.
And I think that's a key word, Mike, safety steps and due diligence and your project planning. Like I said, it goes back to 2007, we understood the problem, went through that, looked at it. We got fair income around like 2017 when we got you on board, and it's really, really important that you utilise experts within the industry to guide council and the community into what options are available, but also the pitfalls. We had a good look at what was happening in the industry, where we were going. Council, because we were aware we'd need to replace this facility, we'd been accumulating reserves over a significant period of time. And that's to the credit of the past and the former councils that meant at the end of the day when we pushed the go button we had over $10 million in reserves. We borrowed an additional $10 million and that introduces what they call intergenerational equity. So the future generations that will benefit from this project will also make a contribution towards the payment of it. We were successful in getting some grant funding, over $7 million in grant funding. The biggest component of that was $5 million from the previous state government's multi-sport facility fund, some other revenue from council. So we had a funding strategy of $30 million. So that was for the construction, the fit out and a little bit of contingency. We were very, very mindful at feasibility stage in certainly being guided by yourself and your knowledge to utilise the services of a quantity surveyor. We put together an expert team of architects, engineers when we did right back at the feasibility. So we started looking at costing that flowed through our functional and technical design brief, which became our Bible. So we knew when we went to design and construct, we had a pretty fair idea around construction costs, and then we were able to insert a maximum ceiling price into a design and construct contract, which is fairly unique to be able to do that. Very pleasingly, we've got the final element finished today with our splash park. We're going to come in at about that $27.5 million mark, and having said that, that includes over $2 million of additional design features that council included during the construction process. So we were that confident with the process and where we were at throughout construction that there were some nice to haves that weren't in the original design that we said yes and we included. So they were client initiated variations that at the end of the day we're able to deliver this to the community.
So I suppose for that design process we're talking solar?
Yeah, every square inch of this roof is covered in solar. I think we're over 600 kilowatts in the system, and that's about, not only did we really focus on the capital costs, it was never going to be the capital costs that would be the huge, but it's the ongoing future sustainability. And as you know, unless you plan for that, we did multiple business cases, operating plans that you coordinated. We looked at that to make sure that the end product was going to be viable and sustainable for council to run into the future. And a roof full of solar is important. We've got the option, we're future-proofing with potential to bolt on batteries, future-proofing again to expand the footprint to look at other income-generating uses like spa facilities, saunas, etc., potentially in the future. But I'm happy with where we're at the moment.
So anyone watching this video is probably watching me in a ball of sweat. We're actually in the warm water program pool, and this is the first ever three-way movable floor. and platform lift,
Yep.
fully accessible, movable stairs. And I think the challenge, I mentioned Odium Planning Group had a team of people helping with those initial feasibility and design, and what we said was we just wouldn't have the capital to build a separate learn to swim pool and a warm water pool for older adults, and your age profile said we had a lot of both of those age groups.
Yep.
So what has this meant to...
This has been the key attractant to the redevelopment. As someone that was a user of the previous facility, we always had trouble trying to juggle the use with the water temperature to meet everybody's needs. So if you're down here swimming laps, you couldn't have it at 32 degrees, it's too hot. Yep. Some of our elderly citizens that had come and do the aqua aerobics, well, it was too cold. So what we've got in this very unique 20 by 10 metre pool with our movable floor, it caters for aqua aerobics, it caters for rehabilitation, it caters most importantly for our learn to swim. The numbers have been really substantial with that. Multi-use, we've got our swimming pool, lap swimmers out there. You come here in the morning, this is chock-a-block with people using this facility, and the fact that the touch of a button they can adjust the floor height to meet the needs of the user group, that's absolutely fantastic. And we're keen to embrace that technology, and it's going to serve our needs exceptionally well into the future.
So I suppose in summing up, the journey with council, how did you go about it, and the sort of phases and stages, because there's a lot of decision making and big capital decisions to be made on that process. And then the hard stuff starts: tenders, negotiating with builders, making sure designers give you back what you wanted. I suppose I'm interested in that journey from council.
It was one that, like I said, it was a lengthy process, but one that I wouldn't change. I think our project planning and due diligence was very important. We established a sunset committee of council early in the process back in 2017, recognising the significant amount of work that would need to happen. That sunset committee reported back to council, so they were kept in the loop throughout the entire process. Obviously there were a number of stages throughout, starting from feasibility, and that's really where there was the extensive community stakeholder consultation kicked off at that feasibility stage, continued right throughout. We were doing detailed design finalising detailed design when construction had, when demolition had started to take place. Certainly not for the faint-hearted, but given the fact we'd done the hard yards with our functional and technical design brief, which was really our Bible, we were able to make sure we kept faith with our original design brief, what we wanted, the intent, and within budget. So council were involved in every step along that journey, as certainly was yourself, and I think that process served us very well. The procurement around the design and construct, again, a fairly comprehensive process. We went expressions of interest, tenders, declined to accept any tenders, resolved to enter into the direct negotiations with Hines Constructions from Bathurst, who ultimately built this facility for us. A couple of fairly intense negotiation sessions that you
in Sydney, in the trenches, poking our heads out.
But again, we'd done our work. We had our specialist advisory group that continued the journey with us. We were able to come up with a solution that worked not just for council but also for the construction contractor, which is important. And then, I think at the end of the day, when we pushed the button on to actually start works, a lot of the hard work had already been done, and to see what followed from then, and they were able to deliver upon our vision is fantastic, and certainly proud day for Inverell to see it accomplished.
So, as you mentioned, capital's one thing, and you'd been planning to fund capital, but we know this is a 50-year facility,
but without a doubt,
and they cost a lot of money to run, a lot of staff, a lot of energy, etc. Using again Odium Planning and using Mel Kuhn with his expertise, I suppose, how did you attack making sure that you understood what the real operational costs would be? We've done a lot of financial modelling, and then how do you go about getting a management?
So we did a lot of complex business planning. We needed to understand the business case for the facility. It's no use building something that isn't going to be sustainable. We looked at that and broke it down to basically every hour or every day and how many people would be coming in, programming what your expectations would be. Then we obviously went to the market for selective tenders. We've formed a partnership with Belgravia Leisure, who's Australia's fastest growing leisure managers, to deliver upon that. Obviously, with a new facility, there's always some unknowns in regards to utility costs and things, and as you'd be aware, where there's a degree of uncertainty, the market can reflect that. So we've come up with our initial contract where council's taken on to cover some of that risk, as well as looking at a profit loss share type arrangement. But again, we really undertook pretty comprehensive business planning that we sat down with Belgravia during negotiations and said, these are our expectations, learn to swim numbers, reprogramming, reuse, exactly what, even down to exactly how the kiosk canteen would operate, the business model around that, providing a facility where families can come and enjoy. It's not just to have a swim. Mums with the, we've got our aquatic splash toy, which is a centrepiece for families there. We've got the U-Butte coffee machines, etc. So it's about providing that experience, but also generating that income that will make this sustainable into the future.
So probably the last bit is, if I live in Inverell Shire, what does this facility mean for me?
Oh, look, it's an enormous contributor to our community livability and well-being. It's something council, we've got 14 kilometres of river path adjacent to our river, anything that, it's proactive community health to provide this facility. I know it was difficult when we had to close down for the redevelopment. We promised we wouldn't lose 2 summers. We reopened in February, so we delivered upon that. But the amount of people that have said to me and embraced it, that it's so good to have that reopen for them, for their health, their well-being. Big part, to learn to swim with the children. We had the issues with COVID, we had the closure, we had we're regathering those numbers. That's so important into the future. But to provide and particularly a modern facility that's so accessible, so any member of the community, when you look at the platform lifts, our lifting devices, our grades, a ramp into the pool, our amenities, this is really an accessible facility from where they pull up out the front to any aspect of the facility. So I think that's wonderful, and our community, like I said, have embraced it, and I think it's a wonderful legacy that council can deliver for their community.
Great, mate. Well, I'm looking forward to the open day, which kicks off in about an hour. We've got Ella Ramsey, one of our successful Olympians, apparently going to be...
I think she'll probably have the lap record here for some time.
So, I mean, I think, again, that shows Swimming Australia has been a great supporter of this project over the time. World Aquatics accreditation, as mentioned, are all things that really, when I first came to town, you had those aspirations, but it's been a fantastic experience. Thank you.